others go, we go through neighborhoods to take shortcuts. And I get a lot of comments from a lot of people that said in the summer, the traffic through my small, they consider, neighborhood increases dramatically. So I'd be really cautious to evaluate the options from that perspective. The other one that surprised me a little bit was safety-wise, that we mentioned 22 crashes in 9 years. That's 3.5 crashes a year. Honestly, that's nothing. That's minor. That's usually minor. Route 1 North has had the same number of accidents per year on average for 15 years. I would have expected more because I think it's a very awkward intersection, and I think most out-of-state people almost hit me every time I'm coming up Union Street. But
I think anybody who's driven through the intersection more than a few times knows how many close calls there are as well.
And the last thing,
and none of that gets recorded.
And open up to board discussion, but now what are the next steps from MDOT's perspective in terms of this potential project?
So Maine DOT approached the town several years ago with an offer to install a traffic signal at this intersection. Mm-hmm. At that point in time, the town was not interested in moving forward with that. But I think more recently there have been some changes in the awareness of how much the community would like to improve the bikeability and walkability through this intersection. And there was a sense that maybe the town was more willing to consider this alternative at this point in time. Mm-hmm. When I had a conversation with leadership in DOT is willing to move forward with this project, but we do not want to be, what's what I'm looking for? We are not looking at this as a mandate for the municipality.
Understood.
And Audra and Dave know me well enough to know we want to be partners in this process with the town. We do truly believe that this would be an improvement in many ways for many different aspects through that intersection. But Maine DOT is awaiting confirmation of support from the leadership in the town.
Yeah, got it.
What I have been asked for is if you would like to see one of these alternatives implemented, DOT would like to have a formal letter of request from the town to move forward with that alternative, as opposed to us making a decision and just moving forward, whether it was something you agreed with or not.
Well, clearly, as I said, there's a lot of data here and a lot of questions. It's probably where, and I don't think they'll be all answered tonight because some of them are very technical. So
I had no intention of tonight being the end point.
I didn't think you did, Patrick. I wasn't alleging that you would even try that. But in the meantime, we do have your attention, so we will ask some general questions about the options while we have your attention. So, Allison, you have your hand up first.
Yeah, so this is on the Pathways Committee. We've talked about this a lot, and I heard it come up at those pedestrian safety forums. And I've heard over the years lots of people saying, well, if they just did this, and in terms of the main goal, I think for a lot of these people would be making it possible to walk to Stop and Go, which is a destination a lot of people need to get to, and then cross the road, or have that sidewalk go all the way down to Stop and Go. Would you say that having, adding in a crosswalk or a sidewalk there, are all those things impossible with the current configuration? Do we have to do something different in order to accomplish that?
Can I sort of, before Patrick answers that, one of the sort of the bigger problems that we have is that if you're in a wheelchair or mobility impairments or whatever the case may be, you can't walk all the way from downtown Camden to like the Rennie's Plaza or even,
Side, right, there's something.
yeah, because of the steps and the tree
Oh,
on
right,
one
right.
side, and on the other side, it's not a real sidewalk, it's just
Correct.
space that's been claimed and paved, but there's so many utility poles in the way that it
Correct.
doesn't provide enough space. So, you know, this sort of renewed focus on that intersection really came from, you know, us working with Patrick and his colleagues to really try to figure out a solution with that intersection. And we were looking at it configured as it is now, and there just isn't.
Right.
There just isn't a way to do it if we were to keep it exactly as it is now. So that's one of the reasons why they sort of revisited, you know, old plans or old studies
Sure.
and updated it to try to figure
Sure.
out what are alternatives to how it's configured now, and what are the benefits and drawbacks of
Well,
each.
that feeds to the core of the study, because if you did consider a traffic signalization of any kind, and you consider pedestrian crossing, you're going to have longer wait times at a traffic light for a person to be able to cross. And that, I don't know if that data, I didn't see anything where that data has been included in this study. I'm presuming that.
Like, are we trying to make it safer for, I'm not all that worried about how safe it is for vehicles right now. Like, what's our main goal? Is it to make it safer for pedestrians, is it to make it safer for vehicles? I think that's what we have to kind of.
Well, and that's why Patrick is the one presenting, because he's the multimodal program coordinator. So he can answer a lot of those questions about the pedestrian and cyclist
Sophie, go ahead.
facilities and safety.
So piggybacking on what you're just saying, Allison, it strikes me that different solutions tend to benefit. I mean, there's more benefits from moving the traffic faster on Route 1 than there are benefits to pedestrian safety in terms of cost-benefit analysis, as in what you presented us. Like the goal is really to move traffic faster on Route 1, correct?
Not faster, more efficiently,
But so.
to reduce the amount of wait time.
Right, but at the cost of increasing the wait time on Union Street or pedestrian and bike safety? Pretty much.
I
Pretty
don't
much.
think so, because some of the alternatives that are presented, ultimately the biggest thing that's a barrier right now for pedestrian access is that dedicated right turn lane on the northbound leg for
Sure.
people to turn onto Union Street. There's not enough space between the curb line and the stop and go to have one lane going southbound, one through lane going northbound, and then that one dedicated right turn lane. Some of that space would be utilized by a sidewalk and or a bike lane.
But I think, I mean, the point I'm trying to make is we need to decide what is the priority number one that we want to achieve, or as Allison was saying, what is our goal with this intersection? Is it to move traffic faster on Route 1? Is it to increase bikeability, walkability, safety? Is it to slow down traffic? I mean, there is virtue in slowing down traffic, especially in a resort town with a lot of people walking around. Increasing speed of traffic is not necessarily something we want to do. So the point I'm trying to make is who makes that decision? How do we prioritize the goal we want to achieve by redesigning this intersection? And is it a joint discussion with Maine DOT? Is it a workshop at the select board? How do we make that decision?
I mean, he's the pedestrian safety person, so he has been pretty, he
Yeah,
usually does
and-
advocate for that.
And I would say that when we, you know, like I was saying before, when we originally approached this, it was from a bicycle pedestrian safety
Right.
perspective.
Right.
And I think, you know, one of the things that wasn't picked up in this, but I think if you go into the data a little bit more, and maybe if you had sort of a traffic engineer who, you know, did this kind of explaining some of it, there's also a lot of weird motorist behavior at that intersection where
Yeah,
people are sort of punching out, and that makes it difficult if you want to create a crosswalk for people to go from one side of the road to the other to do it safely, because, people who are stopped and waiting
Right.
are always looking for that opportunity when people aren't coming in and out of Union Street. So I think they're trying, this would, Patrick didn't necessarily speak to it when he was talking about the counts and who moves more efficiently. But I think that's an important part of all this is the behavior and allowing pedestrians and cyclists to be able to cross without,
Right.
that sort of behavior you get from the way it's configured now.
I completely get it. I 100% happy to redesign this thing and this intersection. I think so. It's an awful intersection for plenty of reasons that were highlighted. But my concern is that, I look at traffic lights and there's Patrick, I have such a long laundry list of things that I dislike about traffic lights. I won't bore you. My preference has always been roundabouts. I come from, I'm European. In Europe, we favor roundabouts everywhere as much as we can for a host of reasons. And I think I want to dig into the data, but I also want to understand the process on how we're going to make that decision.
Right. I think I agree with Audra and Allison both. I think this conversation, the genesis of this conversation really came about through the pedestrian safety forums and our conversations about how to make it safer to get around town. That connectivity out to Hannaford, the connectivity to
Query here,
to Stop and Go, the connectivity from one side of Route 1 to the other side. That's really important to me. And the way the intersection is currently laid out with the stop sign where it is and the way traffic flows, there is no good place on any leg of that intersection for a pedestrian to cross any of those roads.
Agreed.
And, the safest place we could identify is just north of the intersection where the existing crosswalk
At Free Street.
When you go south, it's still pretty scraggly where the crossing is. That's not a great crossing either. So
One right before it too,
so to do some type of improvement here that would give pedestrians access to all four corners of that intersection would be huge for improving your connectivity.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so part of that, I think, is eliminating that dedicated right turn lane in order to get that space.
Yep.
Patrick, is a incremental approach potentially beneficial? My first thought is put the stop sign on Union Street, spin the flashing beacon, and you have a significant intersection improvement there for virtually no cost. It does allow you to eliminate the right turn lane on the northbound. See how that works. If it doesn't do the purpose that we would like or intend, prioritized, then look at signals.
It's an option.
I think that's a decision that if that's the way the board would like to proceed, that's an alternative that's put forward here. Once again, for each of these, there are advantages and disadvantages. And, I have to agree with you. It's easily the cheapest solution. One of the questions that I have as the non-engineer is, and I don't live in town, how much of the traffic that's on Union Street that we experience right now is derived from the fact that it has the current traffic flow that it does? How many people who live in the Camden area
Yep.
heading south on Route 1 make that left onto Union Street because they know that they have
5 times a day.
they have a free turn,
Yep.
and you know how to get from Union Street to wherever you're going.
Well, it goes further than that, Patrick, because it goes the other way too. We reroute ourselves to Union Street to take a right on Route 1, so you don't have to
Well-
stop.
Exactly.
You didn't give me a chance to get that far.
Sorry.
But those poor people who are the tourists,
Yep.
who are the economic lifeblood of our community, are now stuck at that stop sign heading northbound on Route 1. And one of the concerns, and this goes back to one of the things Audra said, think about driver behavior when people get frustrated about having to wait.
Yep.
That's when people start making bad decisions and choices that put pedestrians, bicyclists, other drivers at risk.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, but
guess
we shouldn't design for, I mean, we have to stop designing for cars. That's basically, you know.
Yeah, but we also.
We have to take them into account, but they
Well,
cannot be like the number one priority. We have to shift the paradigm here because it's.
To a point.
Yeah, to a point, but we cannot accommodate.
We have now in the summer a better part of a mile back up on Route 1 South every day and trying to get through. And my biggest concern would be also the fact that if we start causing a backup at Union Street for some reason, it's going to back up all the way through Camden. And then your amoeba situation is going to get 10 times worse.
So you need a bypass.
Well, hold on, won't they? Why would it back up all the way on Union Street? Because won't people choose? No, I don't know, but
Stockton Springs.
But I think this is a lot of data in a short time, and Patrick, you know that.
You gave me 15 minutes. I did the best I
You
could.
did a phenomenal job. You did a phenomenal job. It had nothing to do with the presentation. It's got to do with all the work that's been done. It's a lot more than I have anticipated, and saw a lot of good data in there. And I want to absorb it and try to
It took
come
me
back.
5 hours to break the report down to give you that
5
presentation.
hours, wow. But obviously, thanks for sending the report. That's imperative. I think we have to have that, but then we have to figure out, to Sophie's point, how we work that to discuss the alternatives, everything from a sequential approach, as Tom's suggesting, to
Right.
something more dramatic.
And what I recommend is, I agree that I think, this is my personal opinion, I'm not trying to sway anybody.
Right.
I think the determination of whether or not you want to add pedestrian facilities at this intersection is the first question to ask yourself and answer.
Yep.
If you answer yes, that eliminates some of the alternatives.
Yep.
If you say no, then you have a different set of alternatives to choose from.
Right.
And then you need to look at, quite honestly, tear the presentation apart and look at the pages side by side
Exactly.
and compare the numbers
Yep.
that you see.
Yep. I agree. Stephanie, any comments?
No, I really need to look at.
I'm in the same place you. I need to side by side. There's just too much information to absorb. It's wonderful, much more than I expected, by the way. I really think it was quite well done. And from that, questions will evolve.
What I can do tonight is email Audra the report
Yep.
and a PDF of the PowerPoint so you could get digital copies.
Yep.
And since I already have them printed, I'll drop the printed copies in the mail tomorrow.
Perfect.
If I mail it tomorrow, maybe you'll have it by Friday.
Probably.
I've given up trying to predict the U.S. Post
Yeah,
Office.
I agree. I agree. But that would be great. What a lot of great information to chew on. It really is. And we'll have to figure out amongst us boys and girls how we funnel it to a focal point so we can decide good and bad and ugly.
Yeah, and I mean,
Wants to say something?
yeah. I'll let-
Patrick, you didn't mention. So, Patrick, you didn't mention the other option that initially I think Dave Allen suggested or was willing to offer up, and that was taking the best case scenario a step below the roundabout, which was a signalization of that intersection in a temporary way.
Oh.
So that, and then an evaluation of it after it was in place
Yeah,
for a while.
yeah.
I think that was really something we had discussed that really didn't come up in this, I don't mean, maybe you left it out on purpose, but
Did, Dave.
sorry,
That
you
was
aren't
not
gonna get away
something
with
I
it.
wanted to talk about.
you're not going to get away with it. That was one of the things we had talked about because, then there's like, it's at least a trial type of basis. It takes the best case scenario, it signalizes it. I know it was a little bit more expensive for you to do it that way, but that would give everybody the opportunity to kind of change their mind, I think, if they found that
Basically,
the data was.
it's basically experimental.
It was an experiment. So I just wanted to throw that there. I didn't know where that went, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Dave,
Yeah.
thank you.
We explored the option of doing a demonstration there. And the challenge we found was how big the intersection is, how big the corners are because of turning traffic. They don't make temporary equipment that would allow us to do an honest to goodness, demonstration of how this would work. We would have to cobble together it would probably be like a half installation of a full-fledged piece. It would require sinking poles in on the corners and then running span wire across the intersection in order to get the lights positioned correctly over the lanes that they're guiding.
Just really quick. if I
Yeah,
could.
go ahead,
We
Ellen.
did explore it.
So is there, in terms of proceeding with digesting this information, it seemed like a big factor is whether or not we would be interested in the pedestrian crossing improvements and the sidewalk stuff. Do we need to, the way you outlined those options, kind of going back to what Bob's question was, if you add in the estimated wait times and pros and cons of each option and say, okay, this is what we know it would be if we were to do the crosswalks, I kind of have a sense that the majority of us aren't interested in doing this if we don't make pedestrian safety improvements, that the idea would be to do it with
I
that.
don't want to make any decisions about anything tonight. I'm not ready to make any statements about anything. This is the first time I've been exposed to this ever in the town of Camden, and I want to think about it and play with it and look at the report. So I'm not committing to anything.
Okay, but if we were to say, then maybe, do we need to separate it out by these are the criteria or these are the pros and cons in under this scenario, depending on the goals?
Yep.
And if the goal is
Yep.
pedestrian connectivity, then you have to look at it.
Exactly. Yep.
Because that's
Yep. I agree.
I was not, once again, I'm not the engineer. I wasn't there for the calculations. I do not anticipate that the adding of crosswalks would substantially change wait times or the overall traffic flow through this intersection.
Right, it's not New
Based
York
on
City.
timing.
It's like,
But I do see a dramatic increase in the safety for pedestrians going through this intersection.
Yeah.
Now, one of the other elements that I didn't mention is we also may have the option of incorporating intelligent signalization at this intersection. It's responsive, it's dynamic. So we're putting that in at more and more locations.
Like Wiscasset.
What I mean by it being dynamic and responsive, I'm probably not the only one who's here tonight who hates sitting at a red light when you don't see any cars anywhere else. This intelligent transportation system actually evaluates traffic flows and modifies the signalization timing to maximize the efficiency of vehicle movements through the intersection.
Right.
So you're not sitting there at a red light when nobody's coming through the intersection the other
Right.
ways. You'd end up getting a green signal. So
That's good.
traffic.
That's the
would flow back.
Wiscasset model.
I believe so, yes.
Is, okay, good. Boy, lots to chew on, Patrick. Great job.
So here's what I can put on the table. I heard somebody mention it earlier. I realize that this is a lot of information. And quite honestly, I had to see it and look at it and turn pages
Yep.
for me to understand it. I really don't, nothing against you. I don't expect anybody to have really fully comprehended what I was saying until you have a chance to read it and look at it deeper. Somebody had mentioned the possibility of a workshop
Yep.
or a workshop session. You know, I could make myself available. I could see if the region engineer would be available. Unfortunately, the young lady who generated this report is out on maternity leave, so she's going to be out for a little while longer. I don't know when her return to the office is.
Okay.
So I can't offer her up for those specific questions.
Okay.
But we could plan a working session if you were interested to delve into this a little bit
Yeah,
deeper.
that sounds good, Patrick. But I mean, between now and that point, we've got to get some of our act together in terms of objectives and that kind of. We may have to have one. We have to work on that. But first and foremost, we hope to get this week, latest Monday, the reports and information so we can start chewing on it. Then we have to. Then we'll have to have. We have a responsibility to focus and filter whatever information we may want to be asking, so it doesn't become a one-size-fits-all kind of meeting.
So one of the things I haven't mentioned, and to be honest, I haven't necessarily been authorized to say it, but I'll say it anyway. To the best of my knowledge, Maine DOT would be looking at doing these improvements with no local cost share.
Okay.
Now, if you want to contribute to the project, we're willing to let you,
Of course.
but I do not anticipate that would be a requirement.
Okay. We'll let you know on that one. Thank you, Patrick. We're going to have to move on, but this has been great. It was a lot of information. Thank you. Thank you. This is not obviously the last time we'll be talking. Thank you, sir.
Good.
Thank you, and we'll look forward to
Glad
seeing
to
the
help.
reports. Thank you very
you.
much.
Have a wonderful evening,
You
everyone.
too. Have a wonderful evening yourself. Now that we took up all of his evening.
Bye, Patrick.
Bye all.
Bye, all. Let's go on to our last agenda item, which is Select Board reports. And I'll start with Stephanie. Do you have anything you'd like to report, Stephanie?
Are we going to do the
carryover.
carryover?
Sorry, yeah, Audrey, you didn't slap me around about the carry forwards.
Sorry, I didn't.
Okay,
I was
let's start off. Thank you. But the carry forwards, Audrey, maybe a little brief intro to remind us and to, if there are questions of our new members, what the carry forward thing is that we do every year, what it is.
Yep. So at the end of each financial year, so around, this time, we have a good idea of, where the budget from FY22 is sitting and, what line items still have funds available in them and whether or not that's going to be useful for the upcoming year. If that money isn't carried forward and the select board makes the decision on what gets carried forward and what doesn't, it lapses into the surplus or what we call the unassigned fund balance. So the carry forwards really just give department heads and the select board an opportunity to look at what we have left, and if there's a project that we weren't able to expend all the funds on for that financial year, we can carry forward into the next financial year. We do it very commonly with, the capital improvement projects because often those span a number of years, but it can also be with, more operational items. It could be, that we know that we're going to be spending a lot more money in the upcoming year on the records preservation project that's you know, an example of something where we might not have been able to spend down that money in FY22, but we have a plan for FY23 for how we're going to use it. So that's the purpose of the carry forwards. We've traditionally carried forward quite a bit of money in the departments, and one of the things that we're trying to do, instead of carrying forward these line items into the operational budget, if there's an appropriate reserve account that we can carry them forward into and it makes sense to do so, we'll do that instead, or we'll recommend to do that instead.
Yeah, I think the difference there, so you all know, is rather than carrying the specific amount of money forward in that budget account, it's put in a bucket of reserve. So if you want to use it for that department during the year, you take it out of that reserve total bucket for its use. This is most often done when you've had carry forwards every year of the same amount, which means you're not using it. So if you're not using it, why put the tag on it as a budget item and just put it in the reserve?
Or some things, you know, there's a lot of money that we allow to lapse into surplus because that's a more appropriate place for it. But
Right.
These are the areas where, you know, the department heads have identified that it's appropriate to carry it forward into FY23.
Right. And I would point out that most of the carry forwards, as you can see, the bulk of the money is in capital projects. That's where it is, 1.2 million total of, I think, carry forward, that needs to be considered. But most of that money is in the capital projects that are listed here. I'm trying to get to it, but like fingering through 1,000.
794.
Yeah. I know. I'm going to get there in about 3 years.
I know.
Jeez.
Audra, could you explain, just so I fully understand, so I'm looking, for instance, at culture and recreation. I'm just going to pick any summer rec program. We have the option of carrying forward $13,190 from fiscal year 22 to 23. And if we choose not to, that would go into a different fund for the town that's more for broader use.
Yeah, so it would just lapse into the surplus.
Okay.
Or the-
And the surplus is still available for you or other?
No, so the
No.
tricky part with it lapsing into surplus is once it's there, it can only be used by a vote of town meeting, and that's usually done during the budget process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But to your point, Tom, you could take the $13,000 for that department and put it into the reserve. It's kind of like a contingency account, and then you could use it if it were needed in the following year. You could do that.
For another purpose other than Parks and Rec?
Well, no, it would be reserved in the Parks and Rec.
Okay, in
department.
Parks and, okay.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering about too. There's a rule about transferring between only 10% of the,
Yeah, across different budget lines. So, yeah.
so we can't take like leftover Public Works money and give it to Steve Pixley.
Right, and yeah, because I guess.
Only 10%, we could 10%.
That's a good point, because the budget is approved by voters for these different
Right.
items. We have to stick to as close the category
wasn't
that they're
meant in
approved
any
for.
kind of a-
No, I know, you just gave a good
just-
opportunity to explain it.
Good point.
Yeah.
Do we have an idea, sorry, do we have an idea of the aging of those carry forwards?
You mean for each individual one, like how?
Yeah, so how long?
How
so
long we've been carrying
We've been carrying them.
I would say that the one that kind of jumps out at me, the rest of it, you know, the ones that are for like the capital improvement projects, some of them, you know, it's been several years now. And, you know, we're trying to address that by, you know, sort of budgeting differently for our capital improvements. You know, we talked about instead of, you know, CIPs that we know that are going to span multiple financial years, creating a reserve account for those instead of automatically creating a CIP for them.
CIP is a capital improvement
Yeah,
project.
sorry for using acronyms. So I think, you know, but that's more of a going forward thing so that we aren't carrying hundreds of thousands of dollars forward year in and year out. For the, I guess for the others that are on the list here,
Well, go ahead, Audra.
sorry, the more departmental ones, the ones that aren't capital in nature.
Yep.
I would say that there's only a couple that jump out as ones that have been carried forward longer than just this financial year. And there's one in the general government, it's the marketing budget. That's definitely sort of accumulated to a pretty large sum, and it's been carried forward for a few different financial years, and I'd have to go look back to see which ones, but
What's the definition of marketing in this context?
Brochures,
Like redesign and stuff.
websites.
That's what's proposed for, that's the reason proposed for carrying it forward, but is marketing bigger than just, that's like a budget line in our,
yeah, so I think when it was
they
created,
used to like run ads all over the place to promote Camden and get them on,
created,
get us on
that's
those
kind
lists,
of what it
which I
was
didn't care for. but-
for
Those
at the
newsletters,
time.
What?
There's newsletters too.
Well, the newsletters were
That's marketing.
just like the basic town
I guess-
newsletter, which I really think we should get back in the habit of doing. but-
Agreed.
But there was actual marketing that was going on, that it was like,
Yeah.
how to get, top 10 places to go to the
Yeah,
beach or
there were-
retire. We
there were-
paid to be on a lot of those things.
Just to point out, there are 3 mega buckets here. The last bucket is probably the easiest one, which is a small shred, the third one. That is a recommendation to your point, Tom, about transferring a total of 282, whatever the number is, $1,000, transferring it from carry forward to reserves. That's the third spreadsheet.
Where's, the third?
What's the third
The last
spreadsheet?
spreadsheet.
Oh, the transfer to reserves,
Yeah,
yes.
so that amount, that chunk of monies, which is over $250,000, is being recommended to be transferred. For example, the ICMA MPERS amount, $2,000 transferred to Public Safety Reserve. So it's being put in a reserve for that department, so it could be used for that or something else later. But that is one action we need to consider. The other two are actual carry forwards. One is wastewater, which is wastewater commissioners. We should be looking at that, but that's $228,000 and no recommendation for any transfers there. And then the first one, the biggie, 1.377 million. That one is also, as it currently stands, doesn't have any recommendations, except Audra is maybe, I'm hearing, recommending the 34,874 marketing in the professional, is that professional
General
services?
government.
General government, yeah, it may be one we could possibly transfer it to reserve. Is there any others, Audra?
I would say that the dams, instead of, carrying forward into the operational,
This isn't wastewater?
No, it's in the
this is in
dams,
the.
in the first spreadsheet,
First spreadsheet.
Got it.
in culture and recreation.
Oh, I see it.
We have reserve accounts for that purpose as well. So that,
That could be transferred to the reserve account for the dams maintenance.
So,
But I guess my more, so I'm not opposed to carrying forward as a general accounting principle. My question is, I would like to see plans to actually spend down those carry forwards, because these are things that need to happen, right?
all of them necessarily. I mean, how
necessarily.
much more marketing do we need to do? I don't know.
Well, if that account has been languishing at $35,000 for 2 years.
So let's
don't bother.
But so that's why, okay, so I agree with you. I don't understand which ones I need to put in reserve.
That's the problem.
And which ones, like the I&I study, I know we're going to finish it.
well,
right?
I would say,
So
I'd
that's-
say you can assume everything on these spreadsheets that they're recommending, unless there's something saying transfer to reserve, they're recommending you just carry it forward into that same line item.
That's the way I'm reading. I'm trying to get.
Department head saying that they need it to do something else.
Yes.
That didn't get finished and.
Yeah. And, or they're needing, they recognize now with what they have budgeted that it would be helpful to have
If the-
those additional funds to cover something like with the, the contract that we have with the YMCA for the summer rec program.
Right.
Right, that I understand. Okay.
So the 1.377 million and change, the only item you could possibly debate is 34,000. It's kind of chump change in the total.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's not even, you could just carry it forward into that operational line if you want. You don't have to go with the recommendation to put it in a reserve. Or like,
Where would you put it in?
just the general economic development reserve.
To access a reserve, the department head has to come to the select board?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
When it's not there, yep.
So the Economic Development Reserve, I guess I don't know about that one.
There are just there's so many,
Oh, the list of reserves would make your head spin.
yeah, there's
There
a
are
lot.
Communications Reserve.
I
How can we
can,
get those newsletters back?
We can make
Or like-
one. I guess,
You know, the
to
basics.
get back to substance, we have a couple of choices. We can first take the first spreadsheet of the one, with the 1 point, the recommended from, most of the monies is in debt capital contingency, and that is 1.223, is that number? Yeah, 1.2, $1.25 million. That's projects.
Yeah.
And I doubt we're going to be moving any of those around. So the delta between that and 1.377 is $140,000, which is this miscellaneous stuff. So, you're really not playing with a lot here. And
No.
my recommendation was just to stick with the 1.377 and carry forward. I just don't think it was, unless Audra felt strongly about any account, but I'm not hearing that.
no, I think it'd probably make it more complicated at this
so, too.
point, so.
So I would look to motion to, at least the first motion, to accept the total general fund carryover of $1,377,191.
So moved.
I'm just curious, 1377, what is,
Second for a purpose of
That's a
discussion.
second of, you keep jumping ahead. I'm going to discipline you again. No, what are your questions?
Again.
I'm unruly.
Do you have a second?
Oh, my word.
Yes,
we second,
did,
yeah.
Yep, sir.
Thank you.
$1.3 million, what is the proportion of our annual town budget? You know what I mean?
Approximately.
9.7,
I was going to say almost 10%.
9.7.
Right. Right. So it's not
Good
unconsequential.
job, guys.
No,
I mean,
it's in the budget.
No, I know it's in the budget, but it means that there's 10% of money that we're not acting
No,
on.
I kind of disagree with you, because if the $1.25 million of that amount is capital projects that haven't been finished. So.
Like the seawall, for instance, that's not enough
So we're
money to
behind-
rebuild the seawall.
No way.
But we want to keep it there for when we rebuild the seawall. But
Or I guess like, the pumper truck, it's a, expensive piece of equipment that we've already ordered.
Pay for it.
We haven't paid for it because we
Okay.
haven't received
Never
it yet.
received it yet.
Yeah.
So I guess your point,
Yeah.
but really, what's your point, Sophie, the amount we're looking at is more, what was the total? It's $70,710
Right, I get it.
in general government.
And it's a good point though, Sophie, and it's
is.
something that, Jody and I have talked a lot about, how the way that we've budgeted in the past, like, to give you an example. So the first year that I started, in the budget that I sort of came here with, and that Bob and Allison came here with as well, it had the Route 1 North sidewalk, Route 1 South is what they call it.
Right.
Route 1 South sidewalk project was budgeted, and it was a CIP for that year, as well as the Washington Street sidewalk from Matthew.
South. Oh, toward, okay, yeah.
One that's being done now.
Yeah.
That was when I first started, that was a CIP for that year.
5 years ago.
So for 5 years, we've had to carry
Carry
it forward as a CIP. So what Jody and I have talked about is when you have a project like that, where you know that there's going to be multiple years of planning and, design and engineering, and then, you bid it out and you find out that it's like twice the cost of what you budgeted in FY 18 or whenever. A better way to do it, and what we're trying to do now, is create reserve accounts for these multi-year projects so that we can keep coming back to them and we don't have to carry forward this money year in and year out. So we're trying to be better about that. And the only things that we'll put in as a CIP are pieces of equipment that we can buy that financial year, or the project once we actually have everything done and it's ready to go, pulling it out of reserve and putting it into a CIP.
So a quick color coding of this, for instance, would help, like,
Yes.
next time we look at them, so that we know
I agree.
this is a carry forward, this goes to reserve, this is going to be, this truck hasn't been delivered yet. I think that would just help with, speak.
So I have a motion and second. Any further discussion? All's in favor? 5-0. Now, to the second spreadsheet, which is really wastewater, so make believe we're wastewater commissioners, we have 228,481. Are there any comments on these?
No.
So
I need a motion for that to be carried forward.
I make a motion that we carry forward $228,000 for $481, sorry.
Correct.
To the budget, to the FY23 budget.
Can I make a quick point with this, just for Tom and Stephanie's benefit?
Sure.
So your role as wastewater commissioners is a little different than your role as select board members. Your powers are more similar to that of like a city council. So this, the surplus or the unassigned balance for the wastewater fund is separate than the general fund budget. So if you were to let this money lapse into a surplus, you still have the authority to decide how that's spent, and it doesn't need to go back to voters.
Right.
Because
different budget.
the select board approves the wastewater and the snowball budgets. It doesn't have to go to voters.
It doesn't go to voters. Correct, that's correct. Good.
It's not in the town budget.
That's a good point. So
One of
this
the
was,
few areas we have more power.
that's correct. There are
Wastewater.
Wastewater, yeah.
three major buckets we discussed: the general fund, which is the whole town; wastewater, separate; special project doesn't get voted on; and snowball, special project doesn't get voted on either. So this wastewater thing is we have a lot more flexibility with this one in a sense.
But should we vote as wastewater commissioners?
Well, they
To do that anymore.
changed the charter so that you don't.
Charter, so we don't have to. That's right. Thank you.
You're the only one that has to be wastewater commissioner.
Do we still get our wastewater commissioner stipend?
Yes, you get $1,500 as a select board member and $500 as a wastewater commissioner per year. And I accept donations. No, sir.
So I made a motion.
And
Was
we
it
didn't have a
second?
second. I didn't hear a second.
I didn't hear a second.
I'll second.
Okay, motion made and second. Any further discussion? All's in favor? 5-0, thank you. And lastly, now this one is the little one, which is for the amount of $282,675. Now this one, all of these are being transferred to the respective reserves as annotated in the spreadsheet.
I make a motion that we approve all the transfers to the reserve in the amount of $282,675.
Correct. Second?
Second.
Tom, thank you. Further discussion? All's in favor? All five, thank you very much. And that completes that item finally. I missed it 3 times. Back to select board reports. Stephanie, did you want to add anything at select board report level? Nope. Mr. Tom Hedstrom.
No, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Bob, I can't go next. So this is Sophie.
So, just a couple things. The first one is that Bob and I attended a meeting of the investment committee to look at the status of the trust funds. And it was very informative, and I think we have a very healthy trust fund as it is, with good strategy moving forward to keep, to preserve and to protect basically the increase that we've seen over the years. And we don't have to revisit this until the fall.
We do it at least 2 or 3 times a
2
year.
or 3 times a
Yeah.
year, so we're going to.
And maybe more, the market's rather volatile right now, and of course, the trust funds aren't where they were 6 months ago. Nobody's portfolios are there. The general market is down, 15?
So and the forecast is to be, I think, 19%.
19%
down.
yeah.
But our investment firm who manages those portfolios is doing a little bit better than market right now. So that's reassuring. But it's something to keep an eye on.
You guys will start getting, if you haven't already, have you gotten the stuff in the mail? I found it like kind of strange that as soon as I got elected to the select board, the investment company already knew, and I would get, you get it mailed like this big packet to your house, and
Yeah, but I've
they're right on top of that.
I've kind of admonished them to send it to the town rather than homes.
Yeah.
But
I'm still getting mine.
no, that's fine. You're welcome to have it. I don't.
Just
I get
yesterday.
mine here. But anyway, it's just what it is. But yeah, you can
I've-
you can review the portfolio and see what's going on and what its performance is for. How many trusts is there? 7, 9?
Well, the big issue, though, is that no matter, and I'm glad that you brought this up, Sophie, and since you're on the trust fund committee now, too,
Right.
what they don't do a good job of is separating out like we have some of those funds that are not associated with the funds that we use for general assistance type things. And so seeing it all separate,
Well, you want a
So
lump
that
like
you-
fund? Would you like
so
to
that you
it
can
by
see,
fund?
like, these are this is what we've
We can
used.
do that. We can do that by fund, yeah.
By
So you
fund.
can know,
yeah.
because the trust funds continue, the ones that are supposed to be used to help people,
Yep,
you know, they
yep,
continue
yep,
to
yep.
grow, and we're
All
only
right.
allowed to use the interest, but that's
No,
we
we
have
can
the
do-
opposite problem. We're spending like way, way less than we ever generate in interest. So
That's true.
there is a real opportunity to be able to help
Yep.
more people. The stipulation is the biggest fund is the most broadly worded, which is for the poor and unfortunate residents of Camden.
Right.
It's the Charles Wood Fund. It started in around 1950, and so some of the language is a little antiquated, but it does, for the trust fund committee reviews it, and it's just something for
Just,
you guys to keep in mind that.
We can break those out by trust
We
fund.
should.
We do it a lot just we fund our own general assistance program,
Yep.
and so we do a lot of like helping people that come in and needing temporary housing or whatever. But we're trying to make an effort also to look for opportunities to fund organizations that are doing, that's like, food pantries and things like that, or if somebody's building a homeless shelter, so that the town's we're not really all that.
Right.
We don't have the bandwidth to be handing out $100 here and $100 there. It'd be better to kind of help an organization,
To Tom
probably.
and Stephanie's benefit, these funds, when I joined the select board, we joined the select board many years ago, the funds were in the order of $2.5 million. Today, they are, June 30th, they're at 6.1.
6.1, yeah.
But at 12/31/21, they were at 7 million, so the market has hit us a little bit. But the overall performance has been good, and that's a summary of all of the X number of trusts. The town, they're as small as 20,000, as large as the Woods Fund, which is a multi-million. But they total, and they're in perpetuity kind of investments where we allocate to stock versus fixed income versus,
But then there's some that are just like the Midco Solid Waste Closure Fund and the
that's a
things that
separate-
are
that's
not.
a-
The
that's
I
separate.
want to see all of that separated out.
No, but that's,
from-
no, but the
That is
Midcoast, the
separate.
I know
Midcoast
that one's
closure,
separate, but the ones from the
It needs-
town, like,
yeah, the different ones we can,
yeah, by fund.
by fund, it would be interesting. We're just looking at the general health and the strategy that our investment manager is adopting
I know, but-
and making sure. I agree with you. It would be helpful, and we can
easily.
ask him to do it. I'll ask Mike to do that. I'll take care of that
Matt,
since
yeah.
I'm the.
But I think one of the, I think that's, important to break it down by fund, because the magnitude of funds is dramatically different.
Because we're trying to have a sense of, how much should we be spending for a year? I mean, it's a little bit embarrassing how underspent it is.
Yep.
Sometimes they don't,
I would agree
you don't
with
want
you.
to broadcast it out to the world, hey, there's all this money, but at
Especially
some
don't
point,
broadcast it
there
to
are
main
people in
DOT.
Camden that need help, and if
total-
you're willing to provide income information and to,
Total withdrawals.
there's a lot of ability to help people.
Well, I think last year's total withdrawals was only about $170,000.
And
It's
that
a
was,
lot more
that was a
than-
great year because, I think
used to be
the
like
first year I started, it was like $23,000.
Right. So we're making an effort. but-
And lastly, there is an IPS investment policy statement that is approved every so often by the select board, in terms of, it specifies how the financial advisor is evaluated, how much they are allowed to charge us for fees, and also, also what the investment strategy is, because we don't allow unlimited, investment in equities, because it can be volatile, and that's all in an IPS. If you're interested, we can get you a copy of it.
Some people might not think the town should be heavily invested in Dunkin' Donuts.
Right.
Seeing that we didn't want them to be here, but
Right.
we are.
I still can't find that.
We're mostly in, we're in
It's
mutual
just like
funds.
you look at the stuff we're invested in, it's like, oh, interesting. That's like
Anyway,
all the people of Camden rallied.
One
against
battle
that.
at a time.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to stop here. One battle at a time.
Exactly. Nope, I think I've already used up enough time, but thank you for the opportunity.
You save it for reserve for next time. Yeah, I have to feel the same. I
reserve the remainder of my time
didn't-
for some future
I had something,
occasion.
actually, I had something else. I'm sorry. We had the kickoff call with Audra and Forrest Bell, with Forrest Bell and Maggie. I think that's important. That was my number 2. So we're finalizing the contract, I think, this week, Audra, because I was remiss. I need to give her one last piece of information.
am consultant.
The river consultant and,
That was nice how you, he said damn consultant and you're like.
are you unruly?
Not yet. I'm learning
to
from you.
reprimand you.
I'm learning from you. No, go ahead. Continue.
Anyway, and they're going to submit a revised work plan because to take into account the date we're going to be starting at. But I think we had a really good conversation, and we're going to continue the conversation. We have different touch points with them along the course of their engagement with us, and we're going to also. Alison has volunteered to give them a lot of information that she's had, so it's started.
Sounds great.
Now I'm really done.
Really? Okay, good. Only a minor thing, just a reminder, we have a workshop on Thursday, 1 o'clock, and I propose that to be in order of about an hour. There's data you have, a packet you have. Let's hope that'll make the meeting somewhat more efficient, but we'll see.
What topic is that one?
You would ask.
Oh, okay.
It's the moratorium on piers, docks, and floats.
Okay, yep.
Yep. That's on Thursday at 1.
I've got one thing. So,
I jumped right past you. I'm not used to you being here.
what's that?
I already asked him.
Oh, you did, I'm sorry.
Or actually, no, I have 2 things.
Polite.
So just to give everyone a heads up, I met with a downtown property owner. They own a few buildings who received the letters about their license being revoked. And parking, but they also address the fact that one of the licenses covers their ability to have decks off the back of their buildings so they can access them. So I said that what we could do is just write up a new license agreement that would sort of protect their ability to have those, or to keep those decks there. So once, we've got that drafted, I can bring that to the select board to have a look at it. We're going to go back and forth with the property owners a little bit on that, and there's a couple of them. So we're going to be working on that pretty soon. Another thing I'm going
Does
to,
everybody know what we're talking about? Do you guys
not.
know? Because this was not, this isn't
Right.
obvious to most people that the area of the public
yeah, I
landing.
totally forgot about that.
That's, most people, that kind of, there's like a little private parking area on the public landing, and then when you go down the walkway to the left, it's like grassy, and there's like, the landscaping is a little nicer than the rest of it. And so that was an agreement back, started like
1990 something?
even before that, where I think it was at a time when the public landing wasn't as popular, that those building owners had an agreement with the town where they would do the landscaping there, and in return, they got to have, I think it was 6, split up between them, 6 private parking spaces. And so, what was it, a few months ago?
It was actually about 3.5 months ago.
Okay, a few.
I don't know, that's not a few to me.
That's
Yeah.
It was a long time ago, but anyway, go ahead.
Okay. That's
it?
basically it. We talked about,
Right.
about ending those agreements so that that space could be reclaimed as, there's no plan for it yet, but the agreements require a 90-day notice. So we voted at that point to end
Correct. That's correct.
end the agreement so that we could at least have it on the table to use that space for
Mm-hmm.
public space. But it's interesting because a lot of people really don't know that
They don't.
that it is public space there, so.
With that.
I got one more
One
thing.
more, I forgot your second one.
So for the priorities workshop, I'm putting together a packet of information to send out to everyone, and that'll include, sort of the list of current projects, the capital plan as well as the debt schedule, and also, all the, past year's priority setting and what came out of that, and sort of
Great.
grouping everything by the priorities and goals identified by the select board over the past few years and the projects that have been progressed in service of those goals. So you just have all that background
That's great.
information.
Thanks, Audra. That'll help a lot. That's in August something, I forget. the
Yeah,
date.
I figured though there's a lot of information, so giving, doing that and giving it out to everyone ahead of time so that if anybody has any questions,
And we set that
time.
date without your involvement. So
August 2nd, right?
You would ask. Just in case there's a problem with it, let us know.
No, that's fine. That works.
All right, with that, I would request a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion, we adjourn the select board.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Like you want to continue? All those in favor? Thank you very much. Thank you, Janice.
you.